All right, welcome back to the Hoosier Huddle podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Alongside me is TJ Inman, the non-parenthetical Hoosier Huddle on the screen. TJ, how are you doing?
Doing great. Yeah, today we wrap up our regular season kind of first glance opponent previews, right? So, a disclaimer on this: it's always going to be a little bit difficult to preview these teams months in advance. It's especially difficult to get a good gauge on how a team is going to look in game number 10 or 11 or 12, right? I mean, by that time, you've had a ton of development on IU's side and on the opponent's side, maybe a lot of injuries, maybe coaching change. I mean, a lot of things can happen in 10 weeks of regular season college football. So all we can go on is what we know right now. And you said just before we started recording here, 3 interesting teams, 2 that are good, and Purdue.
Yeah, I think the best part of this, TJ, and we don't talk about the bye week enough. Indiana's bye week comes at the perfect time if you're a fan. I mean that week is loaded. That November 7th week. So last week we talked about Minnesota and going into the bye. This week we start off coming out of the bye. Get over your bye week hangover and all that stuff, and you go into USC coming to town on was it November 14th?
Yeah.
November 14th. Wow, we have flown through the calendar. USC is interesting to me because they have super high expectations. A lot of people are going to pick them as a sleeper pick to go to the Big Ten title game, which means you're probably going to the college football playoff. It's Lincoln Riley's been there for longer than we think. I think it's been, 6 years?
This will be, yeah.
This will be year 6. He has not made the college football playoff. He's he had Caleb Williams, who won a Heisman. He has Jalen Maeva, who comes back this year. They bring in former TCU coach, what's his name?
Gary Patterson, defensive coordinator now for the Trojans.
Yeah, I could picture him with his purple visor. And an interesting move, and it kind of reeks of desperation. USC might be that team that if they lose a game early, that things might get the seat might heat up there in South Central.
Yeah, you look at the schedule that they've got. The first 4, not a problem, right? San Jose State, Fresno State, Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, and then at Rutgers. Okay, if you're not 4-0, major problems, right? But they'll be 4-0. Then you play Oregon in the Coliseum. That is a rivalry game. That is a game that USC, if they're 4-0 and look good doing it, that'll be probably a slight underdog for USC. After that, they host Washington, probably a slight favorite, but again, kind of a toss-up against Washington. And then at Penn State, and then a bye week because they do play in week 0. So a bye week, Wisconsin, and then Ohio State comes to the Coliseum, and then a second bye week. So you could certainly lose Oregon, Washington, Penn State, Ohio State. You could lose all of those. It's not unreasonable to think that a good team even splits those 4 games. A good team splits those 4, and you enter your trip to Bloomington on November 14th needing that win to avoid a 3rd loss. So I do think my personal opinion of USC is much improved over what they were a couple of seasons ago. Lincoln Riley has publicly said that his roster has gotten drastically better and it is time to take the next step. Well, the next step for Lincoln Riley has to be making the college football playoff. If he
Yes.
fails to make the college football playoff this season, it is hard to envision a scenario where he's brought back for another year at USC.
Especially with all the drama with dropping Notre Dame and
Yep.
all of that we can't make the college football playoff by playing Notre Dame, and you drop that historic rivalry, which is terrible for the sport, and instead they're playing San Jose State in week 0. One thing you went through the schedule, TJ. They have 3 trips to at least the Central Time Zone, and 3 trips to the Eastern Time Zone for to at least the Central. IU would be that third one. You
Yep.
have to go to Rutgers.
Yep.
You have to go to Penn State.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to go to Wisconsin. You get Ohio State at home, who's going to beat you up, and then you have to fly. You get a bye week. You have to fly back to the Eastern Standard Time to play in Bloomington. It's the schedule might not be that difficult, but the travel of it is brutal.
Yeah. I do think it is pretty difficult given that they play Oregon, they play Indiana, and they play Ohio State. And then you toss in games against Washington and Penn State being on the road. For a team that I think probably needs to go at worst 9-3 with a marquee win over Oregon, Ohio State, or IU, that would get you on the bubble, but you'd be sweating. Now, for the roster itself,
it's maybe.
It's maybe. For the roster itself, the positives: Jaden Maeva returns, veteran quarterback, another year in Lincoln Riley's system. You expect really good quarterback play from them this year. He's a good player, and I don't think it's far fetched to say that he's got a chance to be an All Big Ten quarterback this coming season, just by having a really good year. Not anything that's crazy like a jump up in production. If he just repeats what he's done and adds a little bit, he could be an All Big Ten quarterback. The question mark is going to be at receiver.
Yep.
You lose Mekhi Lemon, you lose Jacoby Lane, you lose your All Big Ten tight end, Lake McCree, and you're replacing them with what you hope is internal development plus 5-star freshmen. The one of the nation's top recruiting classes, the best recruiting class on paper, according to a couple of publications, but one of the best. And you're hoping that some of those skill position guys are ready to step in right away. Their running backs are pretty good. Wayman Jordan, King Miller, they averaged over 6 yards a carry last season. Now they're stepping into that featured role. I do think that their offensive line, they get all 5 starters back. It wasn't great last season. So if you return all 5 starters on a unit that wasn't great, does that unit have the ability to turn into a strength just by getting better? Or is it the same mediocre group coming back to be mediocre again?
Yeah, you also have, the number 5 player in the country as a freshman coming in.
Sure.
I'm probably going to butcher his first name. I think it's Kenye Pepe. And by the time they play IU, you're kind of not a freshman anymore.
That's right.
It's the back half of the season. If your offensive line's struggling and you're getting desperate for a win, that's when you start seeing these true freshmen and come out. And I think, it's not talked about enough with some of the teams, even going back to Rutgers and Maryland, some of the teams transitioning to the Big Ten don't have the physicality of that's required to be good in the Big Ten. We always thought of the Pac-12, the ACC, as finesse leagues where it's high scoring, no defense, and your offensive lines aren't great. So yeah, it's can they block a pass rush, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a brutal 4-game stretch. Penn State traveling to Penn State could be a loss. You have to go to Wisconsin. We'll see what they are. We'll see if they still have their head coach, and then you come back on Halloween and play. What is it? Your biggest home game, second biggest home game with Oregon. It's a toss up, and then you have to go to Indiana. So we'll see what USC does. That could be one where you're looking at an interim head coach, possibly. If they drop Ohio State, if they drop Oregon, Penn State, and Ohio State, you could be looking at the wheels have fallen off.
Yeah. It's a team that could be going in a lot of different directions, and that's a difficult part of doing previews this far out. But they could be going a lot of directions. What we do know for sure is they will come to Bloomington with a whole lot of talent.
Yes.
USC is, regardless of how they put it together, a whole lot of talent. If they put it together and get a leap from some of those younger players that have to step up at receiver, if they get a leap from that offensive line, if the defense clicks and they get it under Gary Patterson, it becomes an incredibly difficult opponent. So I think a very obviously a marquee brand that could be a gigantic game in the national sense, right? Again, another one, another IU home game that's gigantic in the national stage, or it might be a USC team that's flailing, and Indiana gets a chance to put them out of their misery. Who knows? But it's one to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, it's a cool, rare matchup. They haven't played since. I think 81 was the last time USC's come to Bloomington. So it's a cool, you get to see Tommy Trojan come to Bloomington, and, their uniforms are iconic and things like that. So it's definitely a cool matchup. Let's move on to Washington. I think this is one of the more bizarre stories that nobody really talks about because there's been so many bizarre stories in the offseason.
Right.
Look, Washington last year, I thought they had a lot of talent. They had Denzel Boston, Jonah Coleman, a lot of talent on offense. Those guys are now off to the NFL. They have quarterback Damon Williams, who we got to see his first year when they played Bloomington. He ran in spot duties and caused some trouble. He's fast, he can throw, and all that stuff. But people are not talking about, or have talked about and forgotten, the guy tried to walk out the door at Washington. He was leaving. He said, I am done. I am out. And then, bam, ran smack face first into the door because I think it was the rev share agreement was binding. The contract they signed with the Big Ten.
Yes, essentially, it was the rare time when a signed contract actually mattered.
Yep.
In today's college football landscape, which was equal parts refreshing and surprising. So the exit door is blocked or locked. He has to turn around and say, never mind, I'm your guy. Let's go.
Yeah. And he did it, I think. There was some coach, I think one of the coaches' wives or some of the players, they did it while the school was at a memorial service for their women's soccer goalie who passed away from cancer.
Right.
It was on that day where I think all the athletes were going to a memorial service or funeral or something. And it's like, that has to have an impact on the locker room. It does. Yeah. It just has to.
And it's not just, an edge rusher. It's your quarterback.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, this guy didn't want to be with us. he wanted to go somewhere else in the first place. The only reason he's here, and maybe they've cleared the air and all that stuff. That's what coaches are for.
Oh, that's what we'll hear for sure. We'll hear
Yeah,
that's
that they cleared the
in the
air and all that
past.
stuff.
He's been awesome. He's been great, and maybe I'm sure he has. I'm sure he has.
Yeah.
But you're right. If some adversity hits,
What happens?
in the
Who
season?
are you following?
Yeah, fair question.
Their schedule's not bad. Weird. I know they played this early last year. I'm glad they're still playing the game. The Apple Cup to open the year against Washington State. You get Utah State at home, Eastern Washington, Minnesota at home. So you don't go on the road until October 3rd at USC. You don't get out of the Pacific time until October 16th with the trip to Purdue. But you get Iowa on the schedule up in Washington as well as a Friday night game. At Purdue is another Friday night game. At Nebraska on Halloween after a bye week. You get Penn State at home, at Michigan State to come home to play IU, and then the one of the more underrated rivalry games, Washington at Oregon.
Yeah.
I could tell you for a fact those two states hate each other. This should be this is a very manageable schedule, but like we said, what's going on with DeMond Williams and how do you replace Denzel Boston and Jonah Coleman and all those things? Don't forget, Jed Fish was being talked about as the Florida head coach too. So, how much buy-in is there at Washington? What's your take on the Huskies?
So, leaving the DeMond Williams, the leader, to the side, looking specifically at DeMond Williams, the player, dynamic ability, very exciting. Passed for over 3,000, ran for over 600. He's undersized for kind of what you would want in a NFL prospect, but that doesn't matter for Washington, right? I mean, it actually keeps him in school longer, probably. He's a really difficult matchup for a defense because of what he can do with his legs. You mentioned the offensive weapons that left, and that's the big question for them is how do you replace a player like Denzel Boston? How do you replace a running back like Jonah Coleman? Their backup, Muhammad, also left, went to Cal, so he transferred out. Right now, it looks like they're going to rely on Jaden Lamar, Oregon's, I don't know, fourth, fifth, sixth string that transferred in, as well as a true freshman that they're hoping can step up. He was well regarded, but they're not Jonah Coleman, right? So that's going to be a big loss. The offensive line gets back 4 of 5 starters. They're going to try to plug in a Sam Houston transfer at left tackle. It was a pretty good offensive line that gave up a lot of pressure. They were better at run blocking than they were pass blocking, but a part of that is due to just the nature of DeMond Williams and how he'll run around and extend plays. Your pressure's given up number looks maybe worse than what it should be when you're playing with that kind of quarterback. But I think it's a question mark of how do you replace those skill position guys. On defense, they were good last year, 21st in total defense, but they lose a lot. A lot of guys out the door on defense. Their rush defense, no team averaged more than 4.8 yards per rush. And most of their opponents were well under 100 yards on the ground. I don't know if they're going to be able to keep that up because most of those difference makers left. They're relying on the transfer portal to really plug a lot of gaps. Everybody in the starting secondary, minus 1 safety, gone. So it's a starting over in the secondary. The schedule is favorable, and you've got to wonder, if Washington enters that game at something like 9-1 or 8-2, which is very possible, that's going to be an
Right.
incredibly difficult matchup and atmosphere for
Oh
Indiana.
yeah.
That place can get absolutely rocking. And late in the year, if you give Washington fans, hey, look, you've got two, let's say, top 10 opponents coming up on your schedule with everything to play for.
They'll sign up for
That'll be tough. That'll be a tough atmosphere.
Yeah, and it's a tough place to play in.
Yep.
Anyway, it's not IU's first trip up there. I think they went there in 2003 when Nate Robinson was playing corner. But yeah, it's if they could get through that schedule, and if maybe they upset USC, or you're looking at what 9-1 if you lose to USC,
right?
And you run the table.
Yep.
They should be favored over Nebraska right
Iowa
now.
At home. So Iowa's tough, but that's at home.
Yep.
Penn State's at home.
Yep.
It's
if you give them a 9-1, which means they're probably in the top 25, if not the top 20.
Oh yeah.
And with two, if everything goes right for Oregon and Indiana, two top 15 opponents, two top 10 opponents.
Yep.
On the schedule, they're going to be fired up for IU, because that means if you could get IU and you finish 10-2, even with the loss to Oregon,
yep,
you're on the bubble.
Oh yeah.
For the playoffs. So
yep,
should be fun. I'm just mad that this is a late November game. I was looking forward to going to Seattle for the first time. I know your brother lives out there.
Yep.
But from all I've heard is that late November in Seattle is dreary at best.
Probably won't be great. It might be.
It might be. Probably won't be great. It might be. Is TJ's Travelocity review of Seattle for late November.
Yeah. I mean, you never know. Like, it was in the 90s there last week.
Yeah.
So, it's not supposed to get that hot there. So you just who knows? Hopefully
it could go the opposite way. It could be -40. Well, it's never supposed to be -40.
It could, and you'll have no sailgating because it's frozen.
Ice fishing.
Yeah.
Let's get to, speaking of miserable, let's get to Purdue.
Professional right there, folks. That's a professional segue.
You got to get paid to be a professional, don't you?
Yeah.
Purdue. This coming off of, there's not much to say. They finished in last place. They haven't won a conference game since 2023. Indiana's outscored them 122-3 over the last 2 years.
I read this.
Probably could have been more.
I read this stat. Since the end of the 2023 season, right? The season ends. Purdue beats Indiana in the regular season finale. I think it was 34-31.
35-31.
35-31. Since that game, Purdue's 3-21 with one victory over an FBS team, and that was Ball State. Indiana 27-2 with the national championship. Purdue's average score in those games, not just the ones against IU, obviously, but all of those 24 games, 36-17, losing by 19.
That's not great.
I mean, it's not like Purdue's program was on the ascendancy when that game happened, but still, they have been, without exaggeration, the worst power conference program in the country during this stretch, while Indiana has been, without exaggeration, the best one or two, right? I mean, in the past 2 seasons, given the national title.
I'd put Oregon, Ohio State, and Indiana in whatever order you want to.
Yeah.
Is some sort of top 3.
Polar opposites, right?
Probably top 2. Yeah, exactly. Polar opposites. Purdue schedule, it's not forgiving. Again, people will make fun of Indiana's schedule, but you look at Purdue's schedule, you get Wake Forest at home. You get Indiana State to open the year, so they should win. You get Wake Forest at home, which is a big swing game, and then your final non-conference game after a trip to UCLA is against Notre Dame. So you're looking 2-1 at best in your non-conference schedule, and that's if you could beat Wake Forest at home. And Wake Forest is coming off a bowl year last year, and they're not a slouch. They could go into Ross 8 and beat Purdue.
They'll be favored. Wake Forest will be favored.
Yeah, probably, depending what happens week 1. But yeah, if they lose week 1, it might be turn into a pick 'em. But it's just you can't build momentum with that kind of schedule, and it goes back to that's what IU does. Yeah, if Wake Forest doesn't beat Akron.
By the way, Wake Forest, Akron. I was going to say, Akron. So they'll be 1-0. But yeah, who are they beating in conference? When are they getting a conference win? Is it Maryland at home on November 7th?
Maryland at home or Wisconsin at home? I say that because you have no idea who's going to be coaching those teams.
That's fair.
Maryland, Mike Loxley's on the hot seat. Hell, him not coaching might be an improvement for Maryland.
That's right.
Wisconsin, again, they went all in on Fickle, not doing the buyout last year and if he's struggling, that's the second to last game of the year. He might be gone. But you go through it. Indiana State to open, Wake Forest in week 2, and the open is on a Friday night in case people are so starving for college football and want to go to a game or something. At UCLA, and that's an 11 p.m. Eastern kick. So sorry, Purdue fans, you're going to be staying up till 2 a.m. At least. And then Notre Dame at home, at Illinois for the Purdue Cannon, Minnesota at home, Washington at home on a Friday night. And then you have to go to Penn State on Halloween, Maryland at home, at Iowa, versus Wisconsin, at Indiana. Like it kind of seems like an old Big Ten West schedule with the teams I named off, but Purdue's not that team that won the Big Ten West or
they can't take advantage of it. No.
Yeah, or had guys like David Bell and Rondale Moore and David Blau and those guys. They're going to be beat up by the time the bucket game rolls around. Iowa and Wisconsin back to back is a meat grinder. You throw Penn State in 2 weeks before that, another meat grinder type of game against Matt Campbell. It's just who's going to be healthy for Purdue at the end. And they don't bring back a ton of guys. They bring back Ryan Brown, who didn't look great. And then, you don't have a Devin Mockabee back there. Right. Your recruiting class, composite-wise, putting in the transfer and the composite high school ranking, their overall rank was 60. They had a 48th ranked transfer class, and their composite was 55. How that adds up to 60, this guy doing math probably went to Purdue too. But, we'll see if Barry – it's a successful season for Purdue going 3-9 or 4-8 and winning a conference game.
Yep. Would be. And getting more competitive, in some of your losses. But I'm
they did a little bit last year.
They were better. They were better last season than they were the season before. Took steps forward. You improve on offense from 127th up to 102nd. Last year, they feel like the receiver room has improved. They do have at least power conference talent at running back with Ijaboy from Minnesota and Gibson from Texas. Now, those guys were not seeing the field at those schools, but hey, I understand the plan there. You get players that were stuck on depth charts that were good, and you hope that with more playing time, they can produce. The offensive line, I don't know if it's going to be even remotely average, but again, hit the transfer portal, brought in players from decent programs, USC, South Carolina. So they've taken some steps there, but on defense, I'm not really sure what the intention is of bringing Kevin Kane, who was the defensive coordinator for Purdue in 2024. Purdue's defense in 2024 was the worst in the Big Ten, and they gave up 60 yards more per game than the next worst team. They brought him back as the defensive coordinator for 2026. I don't really understand why you would make that move. I'm not saying that everything would have been Kevin Kane's fault, but man, that's a tough sell. That is a really tough sell to say, hey, it'll be a whole lot better because our personnel is maybe a little better. Maybe.
Maybe. I mean,
I don't know.
You look at last year, and they were definitely better than. I mean, you and I are better than
the effort. Effort was there. Effort was there.
I mean, you had a shot at USC, late turnovers. You lose 33-17 at home. You put up 30 points against Notre Dame, but you couldn't stop them and lose 56-30. Illinois, you're in it until you're not, 43-27. Minnesota, I think you weren't in it until you were in it, 27-20 loss.
Yeah, come back. Yeah.
Yeah, Northwestern was a 19-0 blowout. Rutgers, they should have beat, but the most Purdue thing happened to Purdue with like a fumble on a kneel down. I don't know. It was ridiculous. It was
the Rutgers one is the one that
they fumbled. Yeah, they had the ball with the chance to win it. They fumbled it in their own territory. Rutgers jumps on it. It's a game that should have gone to overtime at the worst.
Right.
It ended up with a game-winning kick for Rutgers. Yep. Michigan, they had a shot at 21-16 at Michigan. Ohio State took their foot off the gas in like after Texas last year. And so they it was only a 24-point loss. And then you go up to Washington. Brown gets hurt and is not playing that game, and you get throttled the last two games of the year. If you're a Purdue fan, why I don't get why you're listening to the podcast, but thank you for listening to the podcast.
That's right.
And secondly, what are the realistic goals? Are you going to turn some of those? Is there hope to turn some of those close wins or close losses into wins, like Minnesota at home, like a Maryland at home, maybe even Wisconsin at home, Wake Forest at home? Like those are when we used to talk about IU trying to find 6 wins to go to a bowl game. Those are those toss-up games that maybe if you do beat Wake Forest, you could get rolling a little bit and go into UCLA and beat a new head coach in Bob Chesney, and kind of get a little momentum.
Yep.
Or you could beat Minnesota at home, or maybe Washington's half asleep on a short week, or Maryland. Where are you finding some momentum and some positives?
Yeah, I do think that 2 out of 3 home games, Maryland and Wisconsin, I think that you look at that and say, okay, we really have to show growth here. We really do. And if not, if you go through another Big Ten season without picking up a conference win, and you're, let's say, 2-10, let's say you do get Wake Forest, but then you lose 10 straight to end the season, that's just a really difficult sell when you're going to those boosters trying to increase your NIL. It becomes very difficult to sell your vision when the results are what they are. But
and they have a new AD coming in after the year, right?
That's correct. He's retiring.
Isn't he retiring at the end of the year?
Yep.
At the end of the school year or something next year.
So
yeah, that probably gives Barry Odom at least another year if he does go 2-10.
Oh yeah, I don't think hot seat in hey we're going to move on. I look at it as how do you improve the program trajectory without something positive to latch on to.
Yeah. However, if you do want to go to a college football game that's affordable in the state of Indiana, Purdue opening night Friday night $7. Wake Forest $8.
Wow. Holy
Minnesota $11. Notre Dame is 82, but I think that's because of the opponent. Maryland $8. Wisconsin $8.
Dang.
I mean, this is where IU's came from, so we know all about it. We know those you couldn't give tickets away, and Purdue's fan base is usually good and fills their stadium.
Oh sure, yeah, I have respect for that fan base that has continued to show up. Despite very little reason for optimism here in the past few years. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting
credit
what their strategy is if they do go 2-10 or heck, even 1-11.
Yep.
And it's early, but let's say Maryland fires Mike Locksley and Wisconsin fires Luke Fickell. You got to beat the teams with interim head coaches. You just got to do it.
Yeah, at least get a conference win. I think is. You asked what the goal is. I would think the goal is to be more competitive, get a conference victory, beat Indiana State and Wake Forest, and you can then say, okay, look, we're taking steps. We are laying groundwork. We're getting better. I think that would be a realistic goal for the season for Purdue. Yeah.
Yeah, and they can't get sucked into the trap of, Kirk Signet is 27-2 at Indiana. Because I know The Athletic wrote a whole expose on it. How do you deal with your rival being in basically a Disney movie, as somebody said on Peaks. And we've seen schools panic move before. At Purdue, you can't get caught in if Signetti could do it at Indiana, why isn't Barry Odom doing it at Purdue right now? And if he can't do it after year 2, we're gonna get rid of him and see where you could go. Then you get turned into the cycle of like IU basketball, where you're looking for coaches every 3rd or 4th year.
Harsh.
It's true.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, so that's the regular season, folks. What do you know? There it is.
What is quick? We'll do another prediction show later in the season. Off the top of your head, what's your record prediction
for Indiana?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to do Purdue because that's easier. But for Indiana, 11-1. 11-1 is my prediction. Ask me where the loss is. I don't know. But 11-1, and I do think a return trip to the Big Ten championship. By the way.
Okay, which 11-1 means you're in the playoff too.
Absolutely, yeah, and probably at minimum a home game.
Yeah.
Yep. So there we go. That so be it. Let it be. Yeah. Let it be so.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll give a final prediction later in the summer. But yeah, 10-2, 11-1 sounds right. 10-2, you're still in the playoff. 11-1, you're still in the hunt for the Big Ten title.
I look forward to those commenting that we're being too negative by anticipating a loss. Wild times, right? I mean,
wild times.
I remember being told we were too positive with 7-5 projections.
Yep, way too positive. At 6-6, you guys are out of your mind.
And it
I need something to bring me down, though, TJ.
It turns out those people were usually right, though.
Yeah,
we were.
I need something to bring my sporting spirits down. I've had an IU national title and a Knicks NBA championship in the last 6 months. So We need
I mean,
the
you're
Jets.
wearing a hat of a team that will probably disappoint you plenty.
Yeah, they're still disappointing me plenty. It's
Yeah.
because they're playing a shortstop who doesn't know how to play baseball.
So there you go. You asked for something to bring you down. Just think about the Yankees.
Yeah, I think 11-1 is a, right down the middle, right down the middle prediction. There are some losable games, especially in the meat of the schedule as well. So, but that does it for today's podcast. Thanks for listening. You can find us at HoosierHuddle.com, on X at Hoosier Huddle, at Hoosier_Huddle. Matt Weaver and I also just posted a podcast earlier today. It'd be yesterday, since I'm going to post this tomorrow. Be sure to check that out. There's some news on Monchon Sales. We go through all the new commits, recent commits from that class as well, and then get into a little chit chat about how Signetti's recruiting philosophy is, and things like that.
Yep, that will be a great listen. Thanks to Matt for his time. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We will be back sometime very soon with more preseason content, season preview stuff. We'll get ramped up. Countdown still going on the site. Subscribe, or you can access the forums at any time that you like as well with the membership and interact on there. So plenty to talk about. On the basketball side, the trip to Peru coming up. That'll provide some entertainment and help us get through July on the basketball side. And at some point, we'll have a schedule of games and know when IU/Team USA will be playing, but who knows? Maybe that'll happen like the day of the game. We'll get told, but we'll cover that as we can.
Yep. All right. Thanks for listening. Have a great afternoon.